My name is Nancy Fulton, and I currently run events for 25,000 entertainment industry pros here in Southern California, and you can learn more about the work I do at nancyfultonmeetups.com. So today I'm interviewing Ben Yennie, founder of Guerrilla Rep Media, which you can learn more about on theguerrillarep.com. As founder and CEO of Guerrilla Rep Media, Ben Yennie helps producers sell the rights to their films before, during, and after production. He's represented projects like Sacred Blood by Christopher Coppola and Black Gold starring Marvel's Luke Cage. He's attached well-known stars to projects, including Jodelle Ferdinand of Twilight, Eclipse, and Claudia Christian of Babylon 5. He's author of The Guerrilla Rep, American Film Market Distribution Success on No Budget, which is currently used as a textbook in film schools and is now available in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and independent bookstores, as well as 2 other titles. He's been featured nationally in many places, including CNN Money, IndieWire, Indie Film Hustle, which is the #1 filmmaking podcast on iTunes, as well as in Cinesource magazine. He's also producer and executive director of the Producer Foundry, and he served as an advisor to Film Angels and is the former chapter leader for the San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and Vancouver chapters of the Institute for International Film Financing. Most recently, he has co-founded ProductionNet, a new set of tools and an ecosystem that helps filmmakers with scheduling, budgeting, shot listing, and connects the people involved in every stage of creating a film project. So, Ben, that was kind of a long introduction, but do you want to spend a few minutes talking about how you became a producer's rep?
Yeah. Well, I started as a producer, and when I went to film school, I wanted to be a writer-director, and then I realized I was a better producer. And then I moved out to California to follow a girl, and I found out that I liked San Francisco better than I liked the girl. And then I started going to the American film market, and after a while of trying to produce my own films, I ended up realizing that I was much better at distribution and finance than I was at the actual act of producing the film. So I re-specialized into being a producer's rep and executive producer.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that as a producer's rep, you actually help people out with financing as well as distribution. Can you talk a little about all the aspects of filmmaking that you help producers out with, and sort of when you like to be invited onto a project?
Yeah, so I am very, very, very particular about what I do with financing. It's very rare that I make introductions to any of my angel contacts by filmmakers. Generally, I have to have worked with you on a completed film before I start making those sorts of introductions, because if I started throwing 25 filmmakers at these angel investors every week, we wouldn't be friends for very long. Now, the one exception to that is I do have some fee-based services, which are more about packaging and business planning and building proper investment decks and things like that. Those are things that I will do at an early stage for not anyone, but for most people. But they do come with some not insubstantial fees for the work I'm doing.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that you will help a producer put together the package that they need in order to pitch a project in terms of the business plan and those kinds of resources. And you'll help them build their project so that it's pitchable and it's rational for an investor to put money into. And you'll advise them on the process of pitching, but you're not going to connect people to your own finance sources unless and until you've worked with them on a completed film project that's gone well.
Yeah, I have to have a reason to vouch for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be able to, because these contacts, a lot of them are also my friends. So there's a certain level of, I know this guy's good at what he does, or this girl's good at what she does. And I have to be able to say that definitively without any hesitation. So that's why I have to have worked with you before. And also through the process, the process of selling and marketing a film takes the better part of a year. So you get to know somebody pretty well. Really nice when filmmakers start coming back to me with their next projects at an earlier stage, and I actually want to work on them. It's by far my favorite client funnel. So, yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It totally makes sense, and I think it is definitely the case that if somebody's a filmmaker and they're putting together their project and it's well built from the ground up, they should be able to find investors. It shouldn't be the case that they have to rely on third parties necessarily to find investors. If they've built their projects really well, they can develop those relationships. And I do think that it makes sense if you're a person who's bringing investment into a project that you need to know the person that you're working with well enough to be able to say, yeah, this guy can go the distance, because it's not an insubstantial putting together a film and actually distributing. It's not an insubstantial process. It really is the case. Somebody could be really good at designing the business plan, or somebody could be really good at building the package or attaching the talent, and they could be really bad at the production, or they could be really bad at creating the intellectual property, the deliverables that have to go into distribution. You really have to be able to go all the way from the very start of the project to the very, very end of the project in order to be a good investment.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the other side of my business is producers representation, and I've actually recently branched into direct U.S. distribution. So instead of in the past, I've been working with direct U.S. distributors, and over the next probably year or two, I'm going to be expanding my direct U.S. distribution capabilities. There might be some outlets that I still work with a couple of the distributors I have a good working relationship with on, but I'll be taking more and more of it on myself, which actually ends up better for the filmmaker, because you're not paying somebody to get to the distributor anymore.
So if we could step back and talk about what does a producer's rep actually do, and when do they usually actually come on board a project optimally? Do you want to come on when people have a script that's been fully vetted, that they know covers well? Do you want to come on after they've gotten the first below the line budget from a bondable line producer, or do you want to come on board after they've already attached talent and they're now starting to look for pre-sales so that they can find they can use those minimum guarantees in order to raise money?
So it depends on a couple of things. A lot of the stuff I do is kind of low budget, like under 200, 250. That's not all of it, but a lot of it is. And and when you want to approach a producer's rep for something that's that low budget, at that point you basically should have at very least a picture locked film, if not a completed film. And you might want to talk to the right producers reps before you even submit to film festivals, because good producers reps and good distributors have connections into the big film fest, and they can actually make it more likely that you get it. As a story, I can't say what film this was for, but I can tell the story that one client submitted to Sundance in, I think it was 2016, and then they didn't get in. That's not a big surprise. Less than 1% of films get into Sundance. Anyway, year rolls around. They do the festival circuit. They eventually talk to me. I eventually get the film in the hands of the sales agent. Actually, that was a pretty quick process. And then the sales agent shows the same film, the exact same film, to a programmer friend at Sundance, and then gives me a call and says, "Why are you not submitted to Sundance? I talked to the programmer. If you were submitted, you'd be in." So that's not uncommon. I mean, the reason that happens is not just that Sundance changes their taste slightly every year. That's part of it. But a bigger part of it is their submission processes. They basically have interns watch the film first, and their job is to get rid of 80% of the films at least, and then get them up to the programmers to decide from those 20% that remain. And more than likely, this film got culled in the 80% that go away. And then, so the reason I'm saying this is it doesn't hurt to have a producer's rep or a PMD on at an early stage because they can help you. It may or may not, I mean, look, that Sundance story is an anomaly. That's not something that's going to happen every single time. It's just not. But a good producer's rep or PMD can actually help you make a better festival plan.
That makes sense because you have the context to be able to get to sort of fast track things into certain hands. So I just want to sort of make sure that I understand. So you were talking previously about the fact that you can help people put together business plans and other docs that they would present to investors, which is something that usually happens before production. And then so you also subsequently said that for a project that's under $200,000, normally you wouldn't bring a producer's rep on board until the picture had been locked and was actually, it was complete and locked and was starting to look for distribution. Do you want to talk about?
So yeah, there's a couple of different things here. I wear a lot of hats. I'm not just a straight producer's rep. A regular producer's rep, 90% of their business is in connecting filmmakers to distribution and negotiating distribution deals. That's the vast majority of their business. I also have producer of marketing and distribution services that I offer that are more consulting based. And the services that I offer as a PMD are earlier in the process. And that's most of what I do there. And that's in general executive producing services like business planning I put under the PMD label because I'm already wearing these hats and I don't need to add other hats to it. So yeah, that's basically where I draw the line. I consider myself a straight producer's rep when I'm actually taking a film that's completed and getting it in the right hands. And basically anything beyond that, I consider part of my producer of marketing and distribution label.
Right, so that makes sense. So in one sense, you're acting as an executive producer of marketing and distribution, and that does come on during development and packaging, and prior to funding. You're building the business of the production company, so that you're creating the documents that get it funded, and you're making sure that it can go sort of soup to nuts through the entire process of casting, funding, pre-production, etc., all the way out to being released. And on the other hand, if somebody just has a finished film, then you'll come on as a producer's rep and you'll actually make it so that the film gets as good a release as it can possibly get, given where it is at the point that you get it. Can you talk a little bit talk about the difference between a producer's rep and a sales agent? Because I think a lot of times people think they're the same thing, and I'm not sure that they are.
They are not the same thing. They're very related, though. So a producer's rep will often. So a lot of my job as a producer's rep is liaising with sales agents to get the filmmaker a better deal. Even though I'm taking a small percentage of the sales agency agreement, I put myself in line with the filmmaker. So I'm not getting paid before the filmmaker does or anything like that. Not all reps do. That is one thing you want to look for in a good rep, because then my incentives are aligned to make sure you get the best possible deal that gets you paid as quickly as we can. So a lot of what I do is liaise to negotiate a better deal with a good sales agent and help you avoid dealing with some of the bad sales agents that even if you negotiate the heck out of a contract, the sales agent won't live up to it. There are a lot of people who do that. And so that's mainly what a producer's rep does. A sales agent is more along the lines of directly selling to international buyers for localization. And a sales agent will sell the rest of the world. A lot of times as a producer's rep, I think I've mentioned this, I hold back North America and I work directly with buyers here, and I'm expanding to actually just directly aggregate, market, and possibly even do limited theatricals.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, I think the opportunity for doing platform theatrical releases is actually growing, because I think theaters are having a harder time making ends meet, and that opens up opportunities to set up, to find yourself a collection of 16 theaters that would like to have like a independent film series come through if the films are of a high quality. So it makes sense to be able to set up those kinds of relationships, and particularly if you're representing lots of films, because having a theatrical release does increase the value of the film significantly. And I think actually there are many theater goers that would like to see independent films as opposed to this kind of corporate films that, how many times can you watch Spider-Man? I mean, actually, and they keep remaking Spider-Man. Does it ever trip you out? You go, look, okay, I've seen the origin story for Spider-Man. What is it, 4 times? I mean, 3 times, 4 times? I'm pretty much done with that story.
It's pretty, but yeah, I am too. Also, it's speaking as somebody who actually does book theaters, I think I can tell the story. I think we were actually public about it. I hope I'm not going to get myself in trouble, but I don't think I will. We were working on a film called Goodland, and it's just wrapping up its theatrical release as we're recording this. And it ended up doing, I think, around 16 markets, which is pretty good considering this film was under $200,000, which is that's really uncommon. Anyway, so we were supposed to open in New York at the same time we opened in LA, but Avengers overperformed and bumped us out.
Wow.
So even if you're, and this was week 3 of the Avengers run that this happened. So we were only expecting like 1 showing a day, but they couldn't even spare the 1 showing a day anymore because Avengers was doing so well. So that can happen, and you can't really blame the theater owners for doing that. You just have to plan your release schedule around it, because you're never going to be able to throw the marketing money, even close to the marketing money that Marvel can throw at it, and just get the butts and seats that way. So you have to be smart about so you can do multi-city theatrical runs, and you can't, but you have to be really careful about your marketing expenditures, and publicity is your best friend if you can get it.
Right. Well, and so I strongly recommend that people, when they create their budgets and working with a line producer, because I think line producers actually are a good reality check for a lot of producers. If somebody's produced like 10 films at the 200 to 500 K level, they can look at a budget and look at your screenplay and go, this is okay. In the real world, we pay actors, so I think we should put that into this. And also crew. I don't know. And also, you're moving locations. I just want to point out that there's a thing with that, You have to go from place to place. Like, that's a thing. Like, there's setup time. I don't know. Maybe they didn't mention that. But but I also tell people that the important thing is to make sure that the budget reflects marketing expenses, accurately reflects marketing and distribution expenses. Whether you're planning to do there's sort of several different options. If you are planning to do a theatrical release, kind of makes sense your marketing would start during pre-production, so that in production. So as soon as you know you're going to have a film, you start the marketing, because you would like to have 100, 1,000, 2,000 people that want to actually see the film, because that makes you can fill a few theaters, and also make sure Rotten Tomatoes score be good, and make sure IMDb score be good, because the first people that see it like it. But in order for all that to occur, you actually have to have a marketing budget that bears some kind of rational relationship with the real world. And also, I think that if you're going to do a theatrical release, that means that you're going to need to be able to send people to theaters in the towns or the locations. I mean, you may decide to work with independent theaters, which may not be ever showing Avengers, which if you can find them. But the point is, you still need to be able to drive people to those seats, or there's no point in actually putting the film there. So it's something that you help people do when they're in the budgeting stage of their project. Is that one of the things you can help them do? Is consult with them on a fee-for-service basis, or if you come on board as a executive producer, is that something you can help them do? Is actually create a rational
that is
plan?
That is part of what we do. A lot of times, I mean, I definitely appreciate where you're coming from on that, and I agree. But a lot of times, I will actually keep it as a separate budget. It's not tied into the production budget for a couple of reasons. You're probably even if you have a $250,000 film, you probably want to go SAG because you probably get a star in for even a day. It really helps with the rest of the film.
Yes.
So, with the rest of the film, so you probably want to do that. And if you have a marketing budget in your film that's already $250,000 and it pushes it to even $260,000. You just added a whole bunch of cast costs to your film. So it's a separate document, and a lot of times I even keep it as a separate raise.
Really? That's interesting. So you're saying when you raise money from investors, you plan literally to have two fundraising operations, one that you do to fund the production, and then with the production budget that you've created, and then a second one just simply to raise the marketing expenses.
Yes. So those are, I do it that way for a couple of reasons. The first is the SAG thing I just mentioned, and the other guild things. If you're looking at more like a $3 million film, I would say the other reason is, why do you want to hold a significant portion of money for a year and a half before you're going to use it? I mean, yeah. So that's the big thing for me there. I am a big fan of the idea of staged financing in independent film. There's no practical way to do it right now, so the most I do is a P&A raise later. But
and do you make it? If this is sort of inside baseball, but so when you do that, do you make it so that you're raising the funds? You're creating two different classes of investors, or are you allowing the second investors that come in to basically participate at the same rate that you? Because and if you think about it, what you've really done is the people that came in when they were just doing the production costs, they were taking a bigger risk. When the other guys come in, they usually you know that there's going to be a film because you've already covered the production costs, and these guys are just paying for the P&A. So in a way, they're kind of getting, the marketing guys are getting the better deal. The guys coming in for the marketing are getting a better deal, a less risky deal, I should say.
It is a less risky deal, especially since sometimes, depending on the particulars of this raise, sometimes the P&A raise is done as debt.
Is that when?
Yeah. So that's not the way I like to do it. I'd rather do it as equity, but sometimes, for expediency's sake, it makes sense to do it as debt. And I don't. So that can get the early stage investors a little in a worse position than they should be. That being said, normally the first people I advise offering this deal to are the initial investors. So we say flat out when we're raising this initial round, this round is for the production of the film. We will be raising another round after the film is done. You will have first in opportunity. You will also get a discount at this round. So yeah, that's the best way I can say to do it. And That is how I generally advise clients to approach this, just because I think the only way you can create a sustainable film investor class is to have multiple staged investments from the same entity, whether it be a group of angels or something or an executive producer who's working with a group of angels. You have to have the same people coming back, because otherwise there's a massive disincentive to invest in early stage projects.
Right.
And
right.
That is so I completely agree, and I will flat out say that these are the tactics that I use right now, and I think they're incomplete, and I also don't think that they will solve the problem that desperately needs a solution. But I don't think it's something that any one person can.
Well, in a sense, what you're basically doing is you're saying that the investors, when they first come in, you're letting them know that really you're kind of funding in tranches. You're saying you're saying specifically, this is the first tranche is going to pay the first set of money you give me. The first tranche is going to be for this, and then I'm going to come back to you for the marketing money, and I can give you an idea of what that's going to be. But you just need to know that you're doing a two-part investment, and there's a reason for doing that, and it actually limits your risk. So what we're doing is limiting your risk. And we're also making it so your second investment is optional. If you don't like the look of the film after we've gotten it to the point where it's finished, when we come back to you for marketing money, you can say, no, I'm going to stand pat with the risk I've already taken. If you decide that you do want to take an additional risk, then you'll have that opportunity. But you need to be. It's interesting because you're one of the first persons. So you're one of the first people I've heard actually say, no, you have to raise money for marketing. And I keep running into people saying, oh, investors won't pay for marketing. And I'm like, well, that's not true, because that would be stupid.
Marketing is the safest money you can put in. Really.
I know, that's what I always say. I go, I would put in for marketing. You bring me the film when it's finished and I know it's good. Yeah, you bring me Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? I will give you marketing money, trust me, because I already know it's a good film. I can tell it's a good film. It's already gone through all the risks of production. That's where things are dangerous. Production is where people get their heads cut off. You got a finished film, nobody got their heads cut off. It's good. It's like, yeah, I'll help you market it. That makes total sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and this is why I don't know why I get weird looks when I say this, but I do. So
I think part of it is because I come from a technical environment, as I was mentioning before the call, and I think you do too. You're hanging out up in San Francisco, and I think there's a different that's a tech thinking, right? Because techs think that way about apps as well, right? They think exactly the same thing. The first money that you get is going to be for producing first you have to prove traction, but then you're going to get the money to actually create that killer app, and then after that you're going to get growth capital. So if you really think about it, distribution money and marketing money is growth capital, right? That's where we go find customers. Given that you've got a film, now we're going to go find customers for it. But I think it's specifically it's a tech way of thinking about things as opposed to a really 1980s traditional way. Because in the 1980s, you didn't have to go out for that because you would just sell your film to a distributor and it would have a marketing budget for it. You know?
And that's not the case anymore. We don't have VHS, which was just flush with cash. That's why distribution deals have gone down the toilet in terms of your MGs. Physical media, it has done the same. And physical media was the real cash cow for most distributors. And you have to figure out alternative models now. And a lot of sales agencies and distributors are not adapting as quickly as they need to. There are some. There are definitely some, and those are the ones that I try to deal with. But you have to look at physical media as essentially ancillary revenue. The only place you really make money are from your if you have a theatrical, you can make a bit of money, but with after theatrical splits and rev shares and all of that, you don't make much. But you can actually make a little bit of money. But the big thing that the theatrical does is make your TVOD revenue much better. And I assume your listeners know what TVOD is.
Yeah, actually, you can go ahead and explain it as well. But my listeners, I recommend people work with distributor.com and with rightstrade.com, both of which have. So, if you don't have a sales rep and you don't have a and you know your film's actually not going to do overseas sales, or you're going to try to do those sales directly, I can tell people to go take a look at rightstrade.com, which will give you access to those overseas buyers. And it's basically a platform. It's like LinkedIn. It has all the contact information. You can send secure screeners, and it's got a little deal negotiating widget inside the app, inside the platform. And they're nice people. It doesn't necessarily mean you have the skill to negotiate a good deal, but it gives you access to the market, which is one of the reasons that you're a great person to talk to, because you can help people actually negotiate good deals. And then Distributor lets you get into Netflix and Hulu and those kinds of things. And you get to keep 100% of the revenue that's generated. So you pay. It's a fee-for-service deal. So people understand most people that are listening to my calls understand about video on demand distribution, pay-per-view, etc. But they may not understand the relationship between having a small theatrical release and all the different how that bumps up significantly the amount that you earn from TVOD and AVOD, etc. So do you want to talk for a little bit about what sort of that percentage of difference might be?
I am hesitant to put down an exact percentage because it varies greatly depending on a lot of different factors. But I will say that a relatively conservative estimate is 50 to 100% extra.
Really?
So yeah.
You're kidding. Is that normal? That's an incredible. So like just even a 16 city 1 week run.
That's assuming you're doing at least 7 to 10 markets for a solid week. And the reason I say, and the big reason that this happens, and most of the extra money comes from 2 places. The first place is cable VOD, cable TVOD, and you get put in a higher bracket if you've done this theatrical. And the same happens with iTunes. The big thing is it's a separator. You end up at a much higher visibility level, which makes a lot of things easier to convert. The other thing that you have to that it does is it raises the overall visibility of your project enough that if it's high enough quality, you might start to get people like Amazon or Netflix or other people or even Showtime offering you a better exclusive deal.
Really?
And so, yeah, I don't think I'm allowed. I don't know if I'm exactly. I've seen some deals that I probably can't share particulars of, but there have been times that we've been offered those sorts of deals and seriously had to consider them. And sometimes, like on the Amazon, I mean, I assume you guys know how Amazon works.
Yeah, well, you can go ahead and review it, but yeah, I think.
Okay, but so Amazon basically you get 6 cents per hour viewed is the standard deal, and you basically have to market it a lot to get it up, and into their algorithm so that it actually starts generating views on its own. If you can get into their algorithm, you can make $100,000 a year just from Amazon if you can get into their algorithm. And if you made the film for less than $200,000, that's not bad.
So by which you mean getting into their algorithm? You mean that if I can drive, I'm just going to use random numbers. If I can drive 100,000 users to the film on a particular day through my marketing efforts, and they each watch the whole film, or they watch 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so that Amazon's computers recognize.
The higher the percentage of the film they watch, the more Amazon takes as a recommendation. So if you get your film on Amazon, your first job is to get as many of your friends as possible to watch it and rate it 5 stars. Like, really bother your friends. I'm renting U.S. distribution, so my friends are going to be sick of me bothering them to do this. But but it makes a big difference. I think I do not have data to back this up, so I might be way off. But it's just general trends I've noticed from looking at Amazon sales sheets and revenue coming back.
Well, no, I know for a fact that it does, because when you go onto Amazon, it actually has the what's trending thing, and that what's trending thing is what's getting the traffic. So if you want your film to get onto that, appear in that what's trending thing, where a lot of people, it appears very high in the listing when you go to Amazon, that if you want it to appear there, the only thing that's going to put it there is a whole bunch of people watching it and ranking it highly. And so you have to, which means that when you're doing a marketing spend, you have to be really smart, because you have to not just put the marketing so it drives people to Amazon, but you have to try to get those people there on a specific day, because you want it to be in the top 10. You want it to, you want it to hit high.
You really do. So that's one thing there. And what I was going to say is this exact number I'm about to say might not be accurate, but from what I've seen from sales sheets and a couple of other things, if you actually watch it, if somebody actually watches the film all the way through, and gives it a 5-star rating after watching it, Amazon may well show the film through various recommendation systems to up to 100 other people.
Wow.
And so you have to do it. You really, really do. And again, show. That doesn't mean all 100 of those people are going to watch it. That just means that it will be shown to about that number. And again, I haven't seen internal Amazon data or anything on that, so I might be wrong. But that is about the. But given what I've seen from ratings numbers and revenue numbers from various films that I've read, that seems loosely correct. So yeah.
And is the same true for the way iTunes puts things on its like what's hot list or whatever, or it's
iTunes is, if I understand it, is mainly based on sales. And if you can drive sales for iTunes the day it drops and like get 1,000 people to buy it, and if you drop it on a Wednesday or a not normal day, and you get even a couple hundred people to buy it the day it comes out, you can end up in the Amazon top or the iTunes top 3. Wow. If you do it on a day, if you're strategic about when you release it. And I talked to Jason Brubaker about this. I was actually on a panel with him at USC.
Right.
And he said that he's actually seen people do exactly that with iTunes. So that is another way to go. Basically, you want to get in these high placements because that's how you get the visibility and that's how you get the eyeballs on your film. And that's the only effective way to market it. So another thing is if you do this theatrical release, first of all, you get automatically in higher tiers. If you do the theatrical release and you have a theatrical release planned or you're doing it with a distributor, you should reach out to the iTunes trailers people as soon as possible, because the only time that you end up on iTunes trailers is if you're doing a theatrical and planning on releasing on iTunes.
Wow.
So that's the only time. So you get a lot of extra visibility by doing that. So when you're working with people, and they come and they want to hire you as an executive producer for marketing and distribution, one of the things that you can work with them on is developing a strategy for how to start gathering up their audience. So you have the 1,000 names or the 10,000 names you need in order to drive people to this particular film when it actually releases, and then also to help them do the execution correctly. Like you said, making it so that you do pay for the release and that you let
iTunes people know at the right time, so they'll go ahead and they'll say, okay, they're doing a theatrical release, so we'll put the trailers on iTunes and let people know that it's coming soon, so that you get a bump in. A lot of people that are watching other films will hear about your film, and then making it so you make the expenditure. You send the mail out to everybody and saying, hey, the film's available, watch it in the next 24 hours, so that people actually go and watch it in the next 24 hours, so that you get the bump from being listed in the top 3 on iTunes, and then executing the same strategy for Amazon. Like, you actually help people, because that's like a huge job right there. Like actually managing that marketing.
There are, so the thing I offered in an earlier stage is more of the setup and less of the management. I do offer some management services on that, but they're relatively expensive, and a lot of what it is me hiring somebody to do a lot of like your social media management to make sure that it's actually fed and that you can keep building on that through various apps and things. Because if you had me do it, you'd be paying way more than the job is worth. So it makes more sense for me to set it up, oversee it, and have somebody else actually execute it, because social media is very time intensive.
So in the distribution company that you're setting up, are you going to make it so that you actually are doing? So if you were a distributor, in theory, you would have the ability to, instead of your producers that you choose to distribute might give you a P&A fund. You might say, well, in order for me to distribute your film, there's going to be a $10,000 P&A or whatever, and then you might decide to spend that $10,000 to market their film, and you would end up with a collection of email addresses that like that collection of film. Is it the case that you can gather up those people in order to become part of a database that you market every new film that you release to, so that in the long run everybody who works with you benefits from the fact that you're capturing these names and contact information for people that want to watch new releases on the day that they come out, or want to be able to go to theatrical, special theatrical releases.
So that is definitely something that I am working on. It's not as fully executed as I might like it to be, but I am building my email list, and also a lot of the services that I offer at an early stage for marketing plans on a consulting basis are actually helping you build your email list, because it helps. Sure, it helps if your distributor has an email list as well, and I practice what I preach. I'm doing that, but it doesn't help as much if it doesn't help as much if you don't have one as well. And that's part of what I set up at an early stage, and that's part of what those social media campaigns I was talking about are. The real goal of that is to capture email.
Well, I think there's two different things. I definitely think for a filmmaker has to develop their own list, but the problem is they're only ever going to come out with. Most of us are only going to come out with a film every 2 or 3 years, and that's if God smiles on us, right? I mean, because it's hard. It's a grind. Whereas a distributor who's putting out a new film every 2 or 3 months, they have a capacity to create a better list. It's in a sense, it becomes a communal property. In the sense, especially if you're always distributing the same kind of films. If your distribution company focuses on thrillers, okay, well then you become the thriller guy, and you have the thriller list.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some level of that's going on with me. The big thing, most of what I do is thrillers. But I'm also branching a little bit out into family, because it's the content that's coming across my desk.
Well, and also family's actually really good business, especially G-rated family, and then faith-based family, which is like a really it's kind of heading into white elephant territory. But faith-based family, those folks are desperate. That particular market is desperate for content, and they do tend to watch things 3 or 4 times. And so if you can find content, they also tend to be the kind of people who share films that they like within their community. So it tends to be the kind of thing. So I understand. Go ahead.
Faith-based is great, because not only can you share it, you can do a marketing campaign to churches and actually try to do screenings there. And that's actually a really easy, as far as marketing community screenings, which is something of a thing I do. It's not actually on my rate sheet. The other stuff we've talked about is are directly on my rate sheet. So if you actually, if I do a bid for you, you'll see it there. I do community screening marketing as well, but I'm very selective about it, and I basically develop a plan for each individual one because it's so separate and the lead gen can be so hard. But churches are great because they're really easy and they close at a really high percent. So that's the so I would say, so if you have a faith-based film and you're open to a distributor who's not a person of faith helping you distribute it, I am more than happy to do that. But but I also understand a lot of that market wants people of faith to be doing that. And
it's interesting. Yeah. I knew one of my weird adventures in Hollywood is so I don't know if you ever knew, but there's a guy called Gary Shusett who ran this bizarre film school. Anyway, one of the things he did is he would just take you from studio to studio to studio, and you would meet people, and they would talk to you for an hour. And I went on this one for executive producers, and I met the guy that did the Passion of the Christ church campaign. He designed it from the ground up, and he said, and it's exactly as you described. He said it worked incredibly well. That's why we were so successful. We made lots and lots of money on that because we literally would just call up churches and say, "Hey, we have this film, and it accurately depicts the Passion of the Christ, and they would bring us in, and then we would do the show, and it would be a sold out. We'd have they'd be in church and they'd be watching it. There'd be 800 people in the audience, and they would have all paid to see it was, and then they'd want it to come back to their town to see it in the theater. So so that kind of marketing design that's specific to the film can be incredibly profitable specifically because it is targeted at the specific market and what that specific market wants. And I think a lot of the biggest successes in film have come from that kind of tightly targeted marketing.
Oh, I completely agree. Niche marketing is more important now than it ever has been. And I think that all we're talking about here are different sorts of niches that are relevant, some of which have better systems that you can access them through. Basically, I know some of the biggest LGBT distributors personally, and one of them is a good enough friend at this point. I'm not going to name him, but. I was meeting him by the pool at AFM. He was the first buyer I ever met. And then 6 years later, I had my assistant with me. And she's like, "Oh, I remember this guy. When I first met him, I met him by the pool. He was so young, he still had water wings on. Aw." And it's just and so he's embarrassing me in front of my assistant just for funsies. And that's just kind of the sort of relationship I have with him, and he is one of the world's biggest LGBT distributors. It's not all he does, but it is a thing. And also, I'll finish this story, but then I have to come back to a tangent on that. But so basically, I love it when I get LGBT films because I can just say, "Hey, person," who I'm not naming, watch this film if you like it. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's yours. And it's actually generally a pretty good deal for me. But anyway, the big reason so the tangent I was going to go on is this is why you actually pay a producer's rep or a sales agent. This is not those sorts of weird, funky relationships that result from spending time in markets. That's how you get business done in this realm. And the reason you want to give somebody like a producer's rep or a sales agent, or sometimes both, a percentage of your film is that they'll know exactly who to sell it to and how they can sell it to them.
Right.
And that's not something that you can do without spending years going to these markets.
Well, and I have a degree in economics from UCLA, and I've spent a number of years working to teaching people how to start businesses, like 8 years mentoring entrepreneurs of a wide variety of kinds for a school for startups, and building mentoring programs and creating curriculum. And what's interesting to me is if you really think about it from a market perspective, a producer's rep or a distributor, or a company that does distribution, which is one of the things you talked about how you're evolving into for good reason. There's a certain set of assets that have to be acquired. One is a list of people that you can distribute stuff to, and the knowledge of exactly what they want based upon the resources and context that they have and where they're pushing content to. That it's knowing what that market, a particular distributor wants, or a particular set of distributor wants, and then also it's creating this database of names. These are the people I have in my hand 100,000 people who like thrillers, and they like the kind of thrillers that I like, and I can get on any given Sunday, I can get 20% of this list to go on to Amazon or to iTunes to watch a film. So now this thing I have because I'm constantly pushing content to them. And they know that when I send out an email, it is something that they want to see, and they do want to go watch it the first day because it's something I know what they like, and I give them what they want. And so creating that asset doesn't make sense for an individual film. It's creating both of those assets is not a financially sane thing for any filmmaker to do, because you're not going to be able to push out enough content to those people to be able to get a return on the investment that you're making. If you're only, there's a limit to how much time you can spend wandering around film festivals and talking to people, and also the distributors don't want to talk to you because you don't actually even have a film to give them. Like, why am I talking to you? You have exactly one film. I don't want to talk to you about your one film, right? And I certainly don't want to talk about it 2 years later, so it's like, unless you've got one of the things you as a distributor have, or as a producer's rep have, or as an executive producer working across multiple films, is you say, I have a collection of content. And so it does behoove these people to talk to you because you are feeding them a stream of content, and also it makes sense for you to create the assets in terms of the people that will go watch the films on the first day when it's on iTunes. And it does make sense for you it makes rational sense for you to gather up this paying market, and because you can actually exploit it by actually pushing content to them. So unless a filmmaker wants to become a producer's rep, or wants to somehow magically figure out how he's going to produce, 2 or 3 films a year or 4 films a year, it's a necessary thing for you to exist. Does that make sense? Like, you're paying for something for a reason.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and I'm glad to hear somebody who's not me say it. But no, that was actually very well put.
Well, I think a lot of times people don't understand, why am I paying this guy? And it's like, you're paying this guy because you don't have enough. You're not pushing. He has access to an audience you can't get, and you couldn't get it even if you spent a lot of money getting it. You'd have to spend a lot of money and have a lot of films too, because you personally, when you go and you talk to distributors, you're not buying their attention by saying, I'm going to pay you cash. You're telling them, I have a film for you. I have like several films for you, and I'm going to bring you more good films. And that they need those.
Pay a lot of money. Yeah, that's the big thing there. It's just, there's a reason that I'm not a filmmaker as well, because everything that I do takes all the time I have.
Yes.
And I don't think most filmmakers want to do what I do. And by not doing what I do, you enable yourself to do what you're better at and actually make good films. And I just help you actually get out there and make it. Filmmaking, get out there and monetize it. Filmmaking is a collaborative art, and it requires a lot of different people and a lot of different skill sets. And one of the skill sets that you need is marketing, and another is distribution. And they're not necessarily the same, although they're very related. So, yeah.
Is there is there a way? I guess I had a couple more questions. One is, if people want to reach out to you, via email or through your website, can they? So I have to tell you, when I'm creating projects, I'm big on the research part, right? So in other words, like, consulting with people is important to me. So if I was at the business plan stage and I wanted to understand marketing, I might well reach out to you and go, can I pay you a few $100s an hour for a few hours of consulting so I can say, this is what I'm planning to do. Tell me what's stupid so I can fix it. Like, if I've underestimated something, or if you've read through the script and you go, here's the thing about this screenplay. What the hell is it? Like, you're saying it's a thriller, but it doesn't look like a thriller. I can tell, because it is not thrilling. Now, it is other things, which might be very good, but it's not going to make the thriller people happy, because it is in no sense a thriller, right? I mean, I don't know if you've had that experience where somebody says, this is a thriller, or this is a horror story, or this is a buddy film, or whatever, and you read it and you go, no. So, no, it's not. Because I've read those before. Are you available for that kind of consulting on an ad hoc basis from time to time, or is it something that it's like you wouldn't necessarily? The reason I'm asking is because I think some people may want to reach out to you very early in the process when they're building, and then other people may want to engage you, or at that point, they may want to engage you before they're at a point where you would even consider taking them on as a client, as an executive producer.
I actually had somebody email me out of the blue just because they like my blogs and my writing and all of that, and asked for 2 hours of my time, and I gave him my rate, and he PayPal'd it to me, and then we talked about 3 days later.
All right, cool.
So yeah, it's totally something I do.
All right, cool. And then if not, maybe you could if you reach out and you're busy and there's nobody good, you can say, well, look, I can't talk to you, but here's somebody you can talk to that I think can provide the solution that you're looking for. Like, they have a moment to read your screenplay and to give you notes about whether or not it fits inside the market, like whether or not it's aiming for the correct market, based upon what the film is and based upon what kind of markets actually make money, I
might have somebody for that. If you want a referral to somebody who can read your script and tell you whether it's on budget or not, I definitely have somebody for that. I'm good friends with the UPM of Blue Jasmine, and she does that. If you want somebody to read your script, from a marketing
standpoint. See, I really think that a lot of times when people give notes, so I routinely tell people how to get professional coverage, and professional coverage can tell you, like, your script doesn't make sense or your pacing's all screwed up. Like, that's a different concept. Marketing coverage is a different thing. Marketing coverage says, this is not a thriller. Like, or I don't know how many people, okay.
Yeah, I have somebody.
What you have here is a family-friendly, gory horror film. I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I don't know how you're going to shoot this thing such that it is family friendly and also a gory horror film. So I don't know if you can pull it off. I need to see some art, because I don't know who are you selling this thing to.
So that actually brings up a really good point. There are a lot of people who approach me with cross-genre films thinking that it's going to expand the market. No. No, a family-friendly gory horror film does not appeal to both people who want family-friendly movies and people who want gory. You have to like both. It matches you.
Exactly. People don't like. It's like those people are not good people. It's like, and I know there's like I can give you a list of. I can give you a list. Like, no, this is a film where we torture children. No, that's not a good show. People don't like it. It makes them dusty.
Okay. Wait. Where does the Goonies fall into that?
That's what But I mean, the Goonies was an interesting thing because although it was, my only point is that there's people try to break the genre a lot of times where they go, we're going to do spy thriller, right? But we're going to turn it on its ear and we're going to make it, we're going to pick like a really unlikely, uncharismatic spy. You're like, okay, but here's the thing. I want a spy thriller where the killer is cool. Because that's what I like about spy thrillers, is the killer's cool. Like, this thing you're doing is confusing. I don't know. And I know maybe it'll work. I don't know. But you got to prove it to me, because it seems unlikely. So I guess my point is, like, I think your marketing expertise is advantageous because you have a sense of what the market likes, and also that feeds into how it is marketed. It feeds into what the cover looks like. It feeds into what the trailer looks like.
No, you're totally right, and it also feeds into how you should be engaging with your audience from day one.
And it may very, very well impact casting. And actually, it's another thing you mentioned that you do is you help people actually pick out casting. And casting and genre are a huge issue. I think a lot of times people don't understand that. If you're doing a spy thriller and you want a name to that target market is a different name than if you're doing a family-friendly film. Okay.
Well, I mean, I would normally agree with you, but I actually really liked Get Smart, and I didn't think it could be a spy. So,
okay, you got points. That's true. Every so often, some people can pull it off. Some actors just are really talented moving things across genre. But yeah.
I definitely do that sort of consulting. I am dyslexic, so I'm really slow at reading scripts. So normally you're better off. So if you actually want me to read your script and give you marketing coverage, I may refer you to a friend of mine who does that.
If they were to send you a table reading where it was like an hour-long edited table reading, would that work better for you?
Yeah, that would work. That would work better for me.
Okay.
It's just I only read about stuff as I talk. And so it takes me significantly longer than you probably want to pay me hourly to give you marketing coverage on your script. So because my hourly rate is reasonable but not inexpensive.
No, and I think it makes total sense. I actually kind of think it makes sense for people to do a table reading anyway, and what the hell, you might as well record it. I mean, part of it is just most people do not have the time or interest in reading a script, and also I think it plays different when it's read versus when it's heard. Right? I think there's a you actually get a much better sense of the pacing when something is read. And you get much better sense of the surprises. Like, when something's supposed to be surprising, sometimes surprises don't come across in a read because people have decided to skip some lines. Like I didn't actually read that part of the script because it was like in a long text passage, and I don't read those. It's like, well, you kind of need that for this particular project.
That's important. The best way to find me there is just I have both a contact form on my website, and I also have a way to get to my direct email that nobody ever uses, even though it's literally on every page of my website. And if you use it, I'll actually be impressed because I'm always kind of confused as to why nobody does. Now you can find my phone number on LinkedIn, but you can't do the actual other thing. I shouldn't have said that. Actually, we might want to do that.
I totally get that. It's just I get mystified. I go, why wouldn't you just? There's like why wouldn't you just send me an email? Because people sometimes send me call me, and I want to go. It's just complex. The whole calling thing. You realize it's better. Email's good. I can send you links in email. When you call me, how's that going to work really?
I mean, I agree. There are times when a call is warranted. Most of the time, the introduction is not that. But if you're actually asking me to do a pricing plan for you, I'm gonna need to call you because I need a lot more information to do this well.
Are there any warning signs you would recommend that people watch out for when they're engaging a sales agent, an executive producer, or a producer's rep?
For a sales agency, if they're asking for more than a 35% commission or more than $50,000 in recoupable expenses, just walk. Don't bother negotiating it. Just walk. Unless that is if you're doing a small film. If it's a sales agent / distributor who's actually going to give you a theatrical run, that might cost a couple of million. That's not unreasonable, but you're going to have like a $10 million feature to make that make sense. So, but generally, if you're talking about a small film, $1 million or less, If the sales agent is asking for more than $35,000 in a 35% commission or $50,000 in recoupable expenses, you're going to have to walk. And that's for the sales agent. It's the best red flag I can give you. Regarding a producer's rep, if all they're doing is brokering, I know a lot of what we talk about are actually developing marketing plans and other sorts of things. But every one of my plans here, you know exactly what you're paying for, and you get at least milestones, if not an actual document out of the entire thing on that. So there are actual deliverables that come along with anything that you pay me as either part of a payment plan or paying up front for. Those are all very clear. If a producer's rep is asking for money up front just to broker the film, no, you don't. If they're just brokering and introducing you to sales agents, they should be working on percentage. Generally, the fair percentage for that is between 5 and 15%. 5 I would only work for if we've worked in the past, and it's generally a good friend rate. 10 is about average, and 15 kind of on the high end. If you get a producer's rep who is looking to for anything more than 15% for negotiating with sales agents, I charge 10% for negotiating with sales agents, and I actually charge 18% for liaising directly with U.S. distributors, because I cut the sales agent out on that. You still end up paying less. However, as I've said before, I'm actually moving directly into U.S. distribution, so that fee structure is subject to change, possibly before this even comes out.
So when you're working as a distributor, in that particular case, you may have a P&A fund that you want people to put in, but you would not charge them for. You wouldn't charge them for distribution, because distributors are supposed to pay you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Is that how that works? Or?
That would essentially be it. And also, depending on the size of the film, there's a good chance I wouldn't ask you to put in for P&A. I'd just have a recoupable expense. I'm building that. I just actually wrote that part of the contract. And it's what I'm looking at charging is around $5,000 for U.S. distribution. If I'm just aggregating, if I actually make a sale to a pay TV channel or Netflix or anything like that, I'll add an additional 2 on that, just because that implies that I spent money at markets to make that sale. And then the other one is I might have an additional 3, part for time, but also for additional marketing for a theatrical run. And so,
if you're supporting a theatrical run, is a whole different thing, because there's a lot of that's like finding theaters that want to show your film and will actually have an audience that might actually want to go see the darn thing.
Yeah, so that's a different. So like all of that. So, but I'm trying to keep, even with a theatrical, at least to start. We'll see how long that lasts. To a cap of about $10,000 and recoupable expenses, and that's money and time I put in myself. So that's in most distributors, you kind of want your distributor to have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
And that's basically where that is going. If I were to ask for any, I have contacts at Landmark and AMC. If you wanted to just do it a quick way, we're going to have to talk about doing a joint raise to pay for theater rentals, because that's how that works.
That makes sense.
So that's so those are the sorts of things that I would do there. Going back to the producer's rep, there's one story I heard of a producer's rep asking for $5,000 up front and 35% of any deals they got, if they got it, and they weren't going to negotiate the deals. I negotiate the hell out of my deals. I negotiate to the absolute most I can do without losing a contact, like basically a single time. And that is, and I also only deal with people who actually live up to their contracts. So this guy was just going to basically introduce you to whoever and charge $5,000 and take most of your revenue. So, so don't work with that guy. But and then distributors, you probably aren't going to deal directly with distributors yourself. They want to deal with people like me, or they want to deal with people like me or a sales agent. So
how should people reach you? Should they go through theguerrillarep.com?
Yeah. If you want me to consider your film, or if you need any of the services we've talked about here, theguerrillarep.com/submit will take you to a form that only I have access to. And that will be the easiest way for me to review. And once that's, and if you want to reach out to me about anything else, there's a contact form on the site, or there's that super mysterious way to find my email, which is on literally every page of my website, which you should be able to find. So yeah.
That's so funny. But you've hidden it there on your site, so
I know. I've hidden it in the header of my site. It's so unfun.
That is so funny. I have totally that feeling too. Like a million. It's like, well, never mind. I could put the cure for cancer. I'll tell you what. If you want the biggest secret on earth and you want to hide it, put it on your website and say what the secret is. Like right on your website. Because that'll work. Anyway, that's excellent. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. It really is amazing. And I hope I'm going to make this, with your permission, I'll go ahead and I'll edit this up and I'll make it available to you to make sure that it says what you want it to say. And then I will make it available now and going forward to the folks that I support. And hopefully it'll turn into some good connections for you and some good connections for them.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Nancy.
It was a pleasure. I very much enjoyed it. It was really wonderful.
Fair enough.
All right.
Okay.
Take care, man.
Talking to you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.